Okay.
Oh, there we are. Thank you, lady.
Got it. Thanks very much, Jenny. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm just about to share my screen, so we've got some slides that you can all have a look at whilst we are chatting. So hopefully, just let me know if they're up and everyone can see them.
Yeah, they're up.
Yes, a few. Excellent stuff. So yeah, we're hoping tonight's session is going to provide some inspiration for you to plan an adventure or an expedition. It's important to mention that the slides that we're going to go through and the topics we're going to discuss, they're kind of in a linear format tonight as we go through them. But obviously, when you're actually planning an expedition or an adventure, it's kind of a situation where it's everything everywhere all at once. So you're juggling lots of balls at the same time. So it's not so much a linear process where you do it step by step, but you're literally doing lots of things all at once. And like Jenny said, we'll have questions at the end. So if you've got any burning questions, just let us know once we've finished chatting. So who are we and why are you listening to us? So yeah, we're the Monstrous Regiment. And gosh, we formed well over 5 years ago, but in various different guises. And we can talk about that when we go through creating a team. My name is Jen Roberts, and I kind of originally was one of the kind of people that decided we should go and do this expedition along with Julie. I'm currently an international mountain leader, but my background, 10 years ago, I worked in an office. I had a very boring day job, and I was stuck behind a desk. And eventually managed to crawl out from behind my desk and make a big change to my life. And I now work in the outdoors, so I'm very, very lucky. Yeah, so Julie, do you want to tell them all about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Julie. I live up in Fort William. I work as a sort of I work as a mountaineering and climbing instructor, and I also do a bit of work for British Antarctic Survey as well during the winter. My background is actually from when I was uni. I did an outdoor course, and I just sort of got into the outdoors, got into instructing, and then got into sort of traveling a little bit as well, which is really cool. So I've sort of come from an outdoors background, essentially, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of me.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm Fran. I live on Anglesey in North Wales, and I guess my background is in outdoor education, so mostly working with kids on sort of activity weeks. So not doing anything too adventurous, but getting out in the hills as much as possible. And before this, I didn't have any expedition experience. A bit like Julie, I'd sort of done a bit of traveling and things, but nothing sort of in remote places or anything where I had to carry a heavy pack for a long time. So it was all a bit of an adventure for me. So yeah, it was very exciting. Rach?
Yeah, my name is Rachel Gatehouse. I'm a freelance climbing instructor and a mountain leader and a mountaineering and climbing instructor trainee. And a bit like Fran, this was my first kind of big expedition. Yeah, it was an awesome thing to be part of. And in my spare time, I volunteer as a mountain rescue member in the Peak District.
Lovely. Thanks very much, team. So the Monstrous Regiment, I should probably explain the name behind that, as Jenny said. So I'd read about this article by a guy from, I think it's 1558, and he had an article about the Monstrous Regiment of Women. And it was about, it's basically an article about the rule of female queens and how terrible it was. And the name just stuck with me. And I think there's also a Terry Pratchett novel now called The Monstrous Regiment. But I just loved it. I love the idea of this kind of like the idea of this chap hating the idea of women in powerful positions. And I thought it was a really good name for a team of female expeditioners, basically. So we are the Monstrous Regiment. As you notice, we have a good amount of outdoor experience, but we're not exactly expert pros. Much of what you're about to hear is stuff that we've learned the hard way and that we want to pass on to you guys. But we all started basically with a passion for the outdoors. I think that's really important. So without further ado, we'll move on to choosing an objective.
Cool, that's me. I think there's some slides as well. So do you want to, have you flipped the next one, Jem?
I have, but it's not coming up by the sounds of it.
That's fine. Yeah, that's good.
Lovely.
So choosing an objective isn't necessarily about a specific mountain or route. It's more about what you want the expedition to be, really, deciding what you want to do and the kind of ethos or idea behind it. It's probably worth mentioning here, we'll talk about it a bit later, but if you are going to apply for like grants or funding, it's worth sort of thinking about what they require and what they like to see in expeditions as well. It's not always just the one aim. They like kind of like other things as well. So whether it's sort of community involvement and things like that. So it's worth sort of trying to think about those things when you are thinking about what you want to do. It's about what, where, and how you're going to sort of do your expedition. So what is what you want to do, whether it's sort of, for us, it was climbing a new peak. It might be climbing a new route. It might be running across a mountain range or paddling across the ocean. And basically what you want to think about is what you want to achieve. And actually kind of hopefully it's clear and achievable as well, and not try and go too big. And it's always good also to have a plan B, a bit of backup plan. The where, in terms of sort of places, so we knew we wanted to climb a new peak, and we knew there's lots of unclimbed peaks in Kyrgyzstan, and we also knew that they were peaks that were kind of, I guess, easy grades to climb, because we weren't looking for anything particularly difficult. And so it was sort of fairly easy to pick that country. But when you're looking at countries to go to, it's worth thinking about where's safe to travel. Obviously there's countries at the moment that aren't safe to travel, and you probably wouldn't get insurance cover for them either. The other thing is also worth thinking about female travelers in that country. Are there any barriers, and do you need to overcome them, especially if you're sort of an all-female team as well. Looking at like where people have been before, so previous expeditions is really useful, and that means there's some knowledge you can access, and we'll go on to a bit of that in sort of the research side of things. And the other thing is like what time of year people can get time off work, and how does that fit in with what you want to do in the weather for that country. So sort of end of summer is a good time for Kyrgyzstan, but it was difficult for some people to get time off work then, so it's worth sort of thinking about that kind of stuff. And then the how is kind of the big thing. That's where a lot of expeditions or kind of fail in that planning phase, and how you're going to plan it. And like Jen was saying, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and it's all at different times, so it's worth kind of having an idea of all the things that you need to do, making a bit of a list, all the tasks, and then coming up with dates, because some things are time critical as well, things like grants and stuff. And just sort of, yeah, hopefully that's useful, just having to think about that kind of stuff. I think Jen's going to talk to you about a little more in depth into kind of the research that we did to go out there.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Julie. So yeah, completing research, this will be all consuming basically for a very, very long time. And you kind of need to dig deep, just go through things as thoroughly as you possibly can. I'm hoping that the slides have moved on enough now, and there should be a list of places where you can get some good kind of research knowledge from. So the Royal Geographical Society is an absolutely fantastic resource. We had a UK liaison, so not just the four of us who actually went out to Kyrgyzstan, but we also had some people back in the UK helping us. And one of them was Helen, and she actually went to the Royal Geographical Society in London. It's absolutely fantastic. She said it's kind of something a little bit akin to kind of the library at Hogwarts. It's just incredible. And you can go there, you can find reports and books on lots of different countries. And you can really kind of start to get to grips with the place that you want to go and visit. So highly recommend a physical visit, but you can also get lots of information online from the Royal Geographical Society. Previous expedition trip reports are also a fantastic resource. So most of the places that you end up applying for funding from, they will request a report at the end so that they know how you spent their money, basically. And they'll keep a repository of all of these different reports. So places like the Austrian Alpine Club and the British Mountaineering Council all have online kind of libraries that you can go and search through. So you can search for them usually via country or via region. And you can kind of dig down into the area that you want to get into and read what other expedition teams have done in those areas. Find out the things that they learned the hard way and just make copious notes. We had a shared Google Drive that we just dropped lots of information into so that we could always access everything. So just anything that you do learn, just pop it in a Google Drive so the rest of your expedition teammates can keep an eye on it and everyone's up to speed at the same time, basically. Alpine Club announcements are also great for research. And any publications that you find too. We had one called the Asian Alpine e-News, which was a PDF that we found, basically, which had lots of kind of hand-drawn maps of Kyrgyzstan and the mountain ranges there. It had lots of detailed information about each kind of region of mountains within Kyrgyzstan. So it really helps us to drill down. And the picture that's on your screen at the moment is actually something that we took from that Asian Alpine e-News. So we took those hand-drawn maps that had the peaks that were climbed and the peaks that were unclimbed, and we actually used Google Earth to then kind of, it was a bit of a painstaking process, but we kind of like worked out where those regions were and we plotted each of those peaks in Google Earth, and it gave us a better picture of what was available as unclimbed and climbed mountains. I've still got that document, so if anybody who's following us this evening wants to go to Kyrgyzstan and have an adventure, I'm very happy to share that Google Earth document with you, so you can also see all the climbed and unclimbed peaks there. Another really great place to do some research is local logistics agencies. So we use one in Bishkek called ITMC. And the contact there, Barbara, was fantastic. So they deal with lots of different expeditions that go to Kyrgyzstan. So they were able to tell us areas that were kind of quite hot for climbers, places that were almost climbed out and not worth kind of going to. They could give us information about transport links to the areas we were thinking about. And also other things that they could arrange for us. So getting permits and things like that. So in Kyrgyzstan, the area we went to, you had to get a border permit to be able to go there. So it's worth thinking about things like that as well. We had to have those permits on us at all times. And as you'll see in later slides, we were actually checked on these border permits several times because the area that we went into was quite hot for border activity with Tajikistan. So yeah, worth kind of really digging deep and working out what it is you need to get to those areas. And the local logistics agencies are perfect for that. Events and exhibitions are also fantastic. So, you know, things like Kendall Mountain Festival, anything where you're speaking to people who have a similar passion to you. So it might be a paddling exhibition or event, anything that can hook you up with other people that maybe have done something similar that you can learn from. Other people that have been to the area. The more you speak to people, the more links that you create and the more you learn, the better off you'll be in the long run. Social media is also a really good place to go for information. I just follow in lots of different accounts for the country, for the areas, for other teams that have been there. And it's really key as well that you think about alternative languages. So we knew that people that had climbed peaks in Kyrgyzstan had actually come from Russian teams. So I ended up doing a lot of translating into Cyrillic, into Russian, so that we could sort of search for trip reports that had been done by Russian teams. And then one of the teams that had been to the actual valley that we were going into were French. So I ended up doing a lot of Google Translate into French to try and speak to that team, and ended up getting a trip report back from them. as well, which was really, really great. And they had some photographs of the valley that we were going into. They weren't the greatest photos, so we couldn't quite get the information required from them, but it's always worth asking. But the best one for us was actually Caribbean Mountain Club, KMC, who'd been into the valley that we were going to. They had a fantastic trip report, and we actually had some Zoom calls with their expedition leader, and we got tons and tons of information from them. They were a fantastic resource. So again, it's just about creating those links with as many people as possible. You will basically need to kind of eat, sleep, and breathe your adventure at this point. But the more you do at this point, the better off you'll be in the future. Although, as we learned, as Julie said, have backup options, because life will always throw you a curveball. As we learned, you've just got to be flexible, but do as much research as you possibly can, folks. And I guess the next thing you need to think about is who you're going to go with. So I'm going to hand over to Fran so she can talk about how to create a team.
Thank you. So obviously, thanks. Obviously, the team you go with is really important, I guess, for a number of different things. So I'll just sort of chat through what we thought was quite important. So firstly, finding the people. I think, as Jen mentioned before, she sort of brought us all together from, different ends of the country. So it's quite cool that we could all come together, and we didn't really know each other before, only through Jen. So that was quite exciting, sort of getting to know each other. So you can go with friends or friends of friends, or maybe meeting people through, like Jen was saying before, events, meetups. Obviously, the Women's Alpine Adventure Club is brilliant for meets and courses and things like that, and you'll find like-minded people there as well. Places like your local climbing wall, you'll bump into people there that you might connect with, and quite often they have meetups and like sessions where you can meet each other. And then skills courses as well, places like the National Mountain Centres. They quite often run skill courses, expedition sort of style weekends. So that kind of thing, you might end up meeting people that you gel with and have similar ambitions, and you can kind of go from there. And then in terms of the team itself, like we said before, we're quite a mixed bag of experience, I suppose, if you like. So we all had basic levels of fitness and time spent in the mountains. So we were able to keep ourselves safe and know how to keep each other safe. So those kind of hard skills are quite important. And they're things that you can learn off each other. If you don't have those skills, you can spend time together before, and you can get those skills as you sort of go along and you train towards your end goal. But I think soft skills are just as important. So, someone might have climbed a load of alpine peaks before, but someone else might have a load of terrible jokes that'll bring morale up when you're having a bad day. So that kind of thing is really important. So I think having a nice mix is a good way to go about it. So spending time beforehand is really important. Everybody deals with stress, with tiredness, with hunger in different ways, and so knowing how everyone works is really important, so that you can give each other space, or you can give each other a hug, or you can give each other a boot up the bum, whatever it might be. Knowing how you work together is really important in creating like a successful team, really. And then things like we talked about funding. I think we found on our expedition, although we were really thankful for the funding, I think it gave us a little bit of stress in the back of our head, and maybe we were a little bit disappointed when we couldn't do our first objectives. So just like being aware of that and communicating with your team about any thoughts and feelings, emotions that you might have, just keeping that open communication, I think is really important, and helps to have a successful time and an enjoyable time, because you're there to have a nice time as well as everything else. And then I guess as well, like the big picture is it's not just you guys on that expedition, it's the logistics company that you might have in country. It's the people who have helped you maybe come together, maybe lent you some kit, maybe you've borrowed a tent, maybe you've borrowed a backpack, maybe you've got someone at home that's sending you weather forecasts every day. So it's, although it's might be a small team on the actual expedition, you've got quite a big team sort of looking out for you outside of that. And I've just written here, someone said this to us before we went, and it really stuck with me, that you won't know what your expedition story is until you're home. And I just thought that was really nice. So you've got your little team and you've got your objectives. It might not go to plan, but you'll have some tale to share with everybody else and with each other. And I think that's important to remember as well.
Thanks very much, Fran. I think the other thing as well is that there was a lot of waiting, wasn't there, whilst we were kind of on our expedition. And you do have to be really comfortable just sat around doing nothing. I think it's so crucial. Rach, are you happy to talk about funding?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, here we go. All of the shiny kit that we got. Isn't that a nice picture? So applying for grants. If you're going to be applying for grants to get funding for your trip, you need to have a rough plan of your expedition or where you're hoping to go or what you'd like to do. So you can ask people and say, right, this is our plan. This is why you should give us some money. Okay. So having those kind of things outlined, put together like a nice PDF document, anything that you can kind of do to sell your dreams, sell your objectives to them. Okay. They need to be able to buy into you as well. So we started digging around and looking at all the grants that are available and the awards we could apply for. And I think we in total on our spreadsheet put together 40 different grants or awards. Okay. It was actually quite interesting when I was looking back through these stats. We actually only got awarded 5, I believe. So everyone's hard work, like it obviously really paid off, but there's going to be rejection along that journey. Don't be afraid and don't be put off by that. You're going to get a lot of no's before you get a lot of yeses. But there are those pots of gold, that money out there for you to dig into. And actually a lot of them were women specific or female expeditions. So you kind of have a unique point there that you can build on. When you've kind of been awarded those grants and you've got that money, you've been successful, there needs to be somewhere for that money to go. So open up a bank account for the team. So all the finances are not involved in your personal bank account. That's something that Jen did really early on, which was a really good thing to do. We also kind of built our social media platform up. So when people were like, okay, who are these women? What are they planning? Where are they going? You actually were findable and people can research a little bit about you without having to poke you to find out more information. But we even looked into kind of crowdfunding, and when Jen was kind of tallying up in the early days how much things were going to cost, we were just looking to get money from sources of wherever we could, really. Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask. You know, there's so many different companies and people that are willing to help, and unless you actually kind of go forward and say, look, can you help us out? This is what we're thinking of doing. No one's going to come to you if you don't say. Okay, so ask. Sponsorship in kind. So a few companies we looked at. I think we applied, or we sent messages and emails to Anchor, Icebreaker, Smartwool, Jolbo, MSR, Mountain Equipment, Firepot, Tent Meals, and we unsidetracked. And we were successful kind of out of 5, or sorry, 4 out of those 10 companies. So again, it just shows how much you have to kind of pursue this and speak to different companies, find out what you can offer them. It's not just about what you can take and what you need for your expedition. What are they going to get back for the money or the kit that they're giving you or lending you? So for Tent Meals, for example, they wanted some photographs and some reviews. No problem. I know I'm never buying the coconut or whatever it was, cinnamon flavor one ever again. But generally, like, all of them were really, really good. and that kind of comes on to equipment. So I don't know, Jen, do you have anything else that you wanted to say about sponsorship or writing, because you do a bit of writing?
Yeah, so we were quite lucky in that we applied to the Sidetracked Adventure Fund for some money, and we were very, very lucky, and we won with our application. So Sidetracked gave us some money, and they helped us out with some sponsorship and promotion, and put us in touch with people who might be able to give us some extra gear. So I think they were the people that put us in touch with Firepot for the meals that we took with us. But one of the things they wanted in return was some really good photos for the magazine, and a piece of writing. So basically an article that got published back in volume 26, which should be on your screen at the moment. So it was really nice. So we got some money from them. We got kind of put in touch with other companies that gave us things, but that obligation was that we had to provide that article at the end with some photographs. And we actually ended up spending a day in the Lake District with a photographer and the editor of the magazine, having a kind of like photography workshop in the kinds of photographs that they wanted us to take, because we weren't photographers. We didn't really know what we were doing particularly. So they kind of put that time in for us. And that's what the photo is at the end there, is us trying to take some shots with some good background and some action in them. And they were just trying to tell us what it is they wanted, basically. So yeah, like Rach said, just be aware of, like, whilst they are giving you stuff, they are going to want stuff in return. And I think similarly with the talks, Rach, are you going to chat about Kendall, or do you want me to do that?
You go for Kendall, yeah.
So yeah, mountain equipment, like Rach said, mountain equipment were fantastic, and they gave us literally tons and tons of stuff to wear and to sleep in, and it was like Christmas. It was fantastic. They'd originally wanted loads of video from us, so I struggle to think about it now, actually, because I think looking back, if I actually watched it now, I think we would all cringe. But we were all kind of making these slightly awkward videos, and the hope that mountain equipment would be able to use them. But nothing really came of that. However, they did ask us to go and present at Kendall Mountain Festival. So Fran and I went and did 2 talks about planning an expedition, and then just about our Kyrgyzstan expedition. So you might be asked to go and do that in person. So just make sure up front you know exactly what it is they're going to want from you, basically. It's nice to get the free stuff and the money, but just make sure that you're happy giving them what they want in return. Thanks, Rach.
That's right. I've also just meant to say that it's worth having some backups. So we had some, I think, tent problems near the end, maybe 5 or 6 weeks out. We had everything kind of sorted out. Sponsorship was all good, and then it ended up not being sorted, and we needed to come up with some tents and some solutions. So just have backups for your kit and things that are kind of critical for the expedition to kind of go ahead, and you should still do your goals. Because you can't always be 100% relying on goodwill of people. There's all our bags in the airport.
Fun times.
So kit-wise, going
Right
out,
then.
we have obviously quite a lot of duffel bags here, and then our carry-on was our massive orange 2 black bags, which were awesome. You could pack them up as big as you could get them, or squish them down to a tiny day sack or travel bag. And then this was Jen's mum's garden before we left, where we just took everything out, and we were working out, okay, physically, what can we pack into what bags? We need to buy more baggage. What has to come? What do we need? What do we want? I kind of felt that during the expedition, I think I'd taken 1 duffel bag of like personal kit, clothes, everything you'd need. And we had like a duffel bag of shared sports kits. We had a bit more of kind of axes and stuff in there. But everything I packed, I used, and I'm actually quite proud of that, because it's really, really easy to go, okay, what if I need this? Or, you know, am I gonna miss it if I don't bring this luxury item or this thing I really, really want? And actually going through our bags quite a few times helped you to really filter out what you needed and what you wanted on the expedition. I don't know if you ladies had any thoughts like that on your bags, but that's definitely how I felt about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think I probably
I
took a
feel like
little
I
bit
had
too much
stuff that I
food.
didn't use.
So yeah, we had one duffel each, one team duffel. So as I said, axes, kit, ropes, and then we had one bag of food. So we decided to keep our weight down by taking out any hydrated food and buying that over there. So when we arrived in Osh, we did a big supermarket sweep and we bought all of the snacks and slightly heavier items that would have basically been a few £100 in extra baggage. So you can see in the second photo where the bags are, that big supermarket carrier. That's got all of our snacks and heavier food. But we carried out tent meals and fire pots, which pretty much still took up a duffel bag, didn't it? So for equipment, we had a really big spreadsheet with like a column per person, so we could see right immediately what were we thinking we'd need, what did we have, and you could kind of fill in what equipment was missing, and then between our contacts, our friends, buying things and the grant funding, go and buy equipment that we needed. And then immediately you can kind of see any holes or where things are missing. So that was like a really nice kind of clear way to lay things out. So thanks, Jen, for your love of Excel spreadsheets.
You're welcome.
We split down to sections. So we had personal safety and comms. So things like the sat phone, we had Garmin InReaches, the Mini and the Mini 2. I think we had 3 between the 4 of us, and they were our main kind of communication. Transceivers, shovels, probes, solar chargers. We took 3 solar chargers. I remember I asked my partner to work out the best energy output from the solar chargers on the market. So pinched, borrowed, steeled the best ones up to the best energy output. It's a bit nerdy, but it just meant that you knew how much things were going to be charged, or you had a bit more of an idea anyway, as much as you can with solar charging. So first aid kits, and then water systems. So we had a few portable water carriers, and ideally having a couple in case some were damaged or didn't work was a good idea. And we had an MSR Guardian, which is a water filter. We all had individual Nalgene's and life straws, and then we had a kind of simple mechanism of filtering water through felt, which never actually ended up getting there, but we kind of worked around it. So if that was a bit of an annoying thing, but we had enough kind of systems and enough backups that we didn't die, and we had enough water. I remember for the first day we had like really dirty water, didn't we? And then kind of found a slightly cleaner little stream that came up a few 100 meters further on, and like we were just so relieved to have clear water rather than brown water that didn't need filtering twice. So it's the little things, going back to basics, not having to clog up your Nalgene filters, it just being clean enough to just drink straight through the straw was really good. So camp, 2 different stoves. We had a multi-fuel and a gas stove. Personal water bottles, we had sleeping bags, normal kind of camping things like that, camping mats, head torches, checking that they can be charged. Poo shovels. I'm intrigued when you took 1 poo shovel, that seemed very risky. You probably should have taken 2 poo shovels as a backup.
Ice axes.
Yeah. Having to be responsible and clear up your waste is something that's talked about a lot right now, kind of mountaineering and in the outdoors. So we tried to do that as well as we could. Moon cups as well, or ways of dealing with your period. Climbing stuff. So we had axes, ropes, crampons, harnesses, helmets, screws. We didn't really end up using any of that due to our route choices, but it was good to have it, and we had all the systems to do mechanical rescues and help each other out if there was crevasse crossing. And then kind of things that I'm really pleased that we took. So a pack of cards, really simple, but you can play so many games. A pack of cards when you're sat waiting in bad weather days. a notebook or a diary to actually be able to write out and keep a diary each day was something that I think everybody probably did. And looking back has been really good for expedition reports. When you're there for quite a few weeks, you can actually see, right, okay, this was day 1, this was day 2. And when you kind of go back to do your sponsorship forms or write up trip reports, you've got that information day by day. And it's more accurate than coming back and then thinking, oh, what was it? Day 7, what was it day 8? What day was that? And when did this happen? The filming kit we tried to kind of keep to a minimum because we didn't want to take loads of heavy kit in. If you've ever seen cameramen in the outdoors, they can have absolutely massive bags. So we stuck with GoPros, and they are fantastic. Anyway, the footage from their sidetrack we're really happy with. And we could do time lapses and all sorts of cool things with those. And then just spares, be able to fix what you've taken out. So know your kit inside out. Make sure that you can fix it in the field and it's not something really complicated and techy. Okay, if it goes wrong, do you know what to do with it? I used to do a lot of horse riding, and we'd kind of go into the ring on a show day, and you wouldn't want to change your tack or change something to the horse on that day. And that's kind of something I do in the outdoors too. So know your kit, make sure you understand how it works before you use it in kind of anger. Okay, and I think, yeah, being able to fix things is definitely a really handy skill. So lots of spares and repairs. Yeah, I think that's everything for equipment.
Just a note on medical supplies. There's a place called Nomad Travel, which you can find online. So make sure that if you're going somewhere quite remote for your trip, that you have some good first aid knowledge, basically, because you will be relying on each other to look after each other whilst you're out there. So if anything happens, you want to make sure that you've got some good skills. So I think a couple of us had kind of like advanced first aid, so wilderness first responder, that kind of thing. And then we had sort of small mountain first aid kits for each of us, which we carried. And then we had a bigger kind of base camp kit, which had more extensive first aid items in it. Things like, antibiotics and stuff like that, which you can get from Nomad Travel. So if you are going and you want to create a kind of good, healthy first aid kit, which can kind of cover lots of bases, it's really worth getting in touch with Nomad, letting them know where you're going, what you're planning, and then they'll basically they'll post it through the post to you, whatever you need. So you can speak to one of their pharmacists and get the supplies that you want.
Cool. That's me again. So I'm just going to quickly go through comms with you. So Rachel's already mentioned a couple of different types of comms. I guess the first protocol is to get a local SIM card and have plenty of credit on it as well. And you can do a lot of comms through that. And then before and after, you kind of end up going wherever you're going, like if you're going to be more remote. And you might even sort of be able to get access to signal quite regularly, depending where you are. It's also worth having other kinds of communication as well. So like Rachel was saying, we took quite a few inReaches and they worked really well. And we also took a sat phone as a backup too. So we thought it'd be really good to be able to actually speak to someone if we needed to communicate that way. What also was quite good, it could be worth thinking about if you really are going remote, is the inReaches work on the Iridium network. And if there's any issues with the Iridium network, which is quite rare, but that will affect all of the devices. And so actually what worked out quite well is our sat phone was on a different network. So we had sort of 2 different networks to work on as well, which was quite good. It's not always possible, but it is worth thinking about if there is possibilities there. The other thing as well is we begged and borrowed quite a lot of that stuff. So always ask around, friends of friends. It's a lot cheaper hiring a sat phone from a friend or a friend of a friend than it is hiring it from a company. And yeah, and if you can get it for free, even better. You got to think about who you're going to be communicating with. So people in the country, whether that's an in-country agent, we spent a lot of time communicating with them. And or if you're just having like drivers, somebody to pick you up, that kind of thing. And then obviously we sort of already mentioned about having someone in the UK who was our sort of communication person for the UK. Now that kind of becomes really important, because actually what you need to do is come up with a plan and protocols of the sort of flow of information. So are we going to do check-ins? How regularly are they going to be? What happens if we miss a check-in? And if something goes wrong and we need to sort of call rescue teams, who do we call? And because there's probably quite a few different people, like insurance companies, you might have to call embassies, and obviously you need someone to kind of be in contact with friends and family at home as well. So it's really important to kind of have that protocol in line, and everybody knows who needs to be called or contacted at any point. Is really important. And similar with insurance companies or rescue companies, if you have some kind of like an EPIRB or an SOS beacon, it's really important to share that with the insurance or rescue companies, and even maybe an embassy, or some countries have their own mountain rescue, so it's worth sort of thinking about who you need to maybe share that information with as well. And then language barriers, again, sort of, as I mentioned earlier, how are you going to communicate? Is that going to be someone who can translate for you? And sort of like a fixer, some people using country fixers as well. That's really useful. And it's not necessarily just the language, but the sort of cultural side of things as well. So one of the things we encountered, it's not a lot to do with comms, but we got visited by a lot of local soldiers who were patrolling in the local area. We're trying to get information from them about the mountains to climb locally, because they kind of go up and over the passes quite a lot. And we're like, oh, what do you think about this one? Can we climb this one? They're like, no, no, no. Can we climb this one? They're like, no, no, no. And this conversation went on for about 20 minutes. They just said no to everything. And then we actually realized that we were asking the wrong question. And what we started asking was, have you been up there? And they're like, oh, yeah, we've been up there. Oh, have you been over here? Yeah. Oh, what's that like? Oh, yeah, it's rough. And basically they were assuming that because we're a bunch of women, we shouldn't, going up there, or maybe we didn't have the skills. But thinking about the sort of cultural side of things as well is quite important. And then I guess the other thing is the socials. So we've sort of chatted about sort of grants and funding, or you might just want to be keeping people at home up to date. So who's going to do the socials? Are you going to try and do them from where you are? Have you got a decent signal? Can you send pictures? Or have you got someone at home that kind of share information? And the inReaches were quite good because they could be, anybody could see them. So people at home could see our map of where we've been. And so they could post things like that with some words and stuff. So obviously everybody loves pictures, don't they? But it's not always possible. So just thinking about how you kind of communicate the sort of social side of things as well. And like Rach said as well, I guess one of the last things is how are you going to kind of power it all and work everything. There's so many things we can carry now, but it obviously all requires power and power packs and things like that. So just thinking about how are you going to do all that and manage that as well. Cool. That's kind of me for comms.
So then food, which is my favorite thing of all time. Food is obviously really important. You're going to be somewhere potentially remote, potentially not. It depends what your adventure is. But what you do know is you're going to have to eat, and probably a lot, because you might be expending quite a lot of energy. Like Rachel said earlier, we took dehydrated food, which is quite a good way of keeping things a little bit lighter, especially if you're having to carry all your kit in on your back. There's lots of different companies that make dehydrated food now. I often try and find the ones with the least amount of additives, because when you're eating dehydrated food for a prolonged period of time, it will make your stomach strange. I don't think there's any way around it. It just happens. So trying them before you go to see kind of what effects they have on you, and trying to find ones that have sort of the least amount of additives, I've found kind of works the best for keeping your stomach less strange. So we had Fire Pot, Real Termat are also really good, and there's Lyo or Leo, Lyo, and they're quite tasty as well, and they're all quite yeah, they're all just sort of natural ingredients. So looking out for those kind of things. And then, like Rach said, we just sort of bulked that up with stuff that we bought in country. So we did a little bit of research about what the supermarkets were like, and on Google Maps, sometimes it comes up with pictures, and so you could sort of look, and you're like, oh yeah, they're going to have rice and nuts and dried fruit and that kind of thing. So we can get all that in country. So we sort of had that planned, so we could have our meals in the evening, and then we could just bulk that up with rice or with couscous or whatever it might be. And then we had our sort of ready-made porridge meals that we then could add more porridge to if we needed a bit more energy for that day. And then things like protein bars, energy bars, those kind of things, they're really good. They're all really sweet. It's really hard to find a savoury bar. So we all took either veggie sort of jerky or beef jerky as like a savoury option, because when you're eating sweet things all the time, all of a sudden you're just really craving something that's not sweet. So thinking about that a little bit as well. And also, it didn't happen for us, but some of those energy bars can be quite hard when it's really cold. So if you are going to high altitudes, just bearing in mind that the sort of really hard, nutty bars can be quite hard to eat when they get really cold. And then just other things like maybe taking a bit of tea and electrolytes. The water you're going to be drinking hopefully is beautifully clear, coming from a spring, but it might not be. It might be horrible and orange like ours was for the first few days. So just having something that will make your filtered water taste a little bit nicer. And then obviously with all that downtime you've got, whether you're recovering or whether you're waiting out weather, drinking tea, there's just something really comforting about that. So something like that is good as well. And then the picture you're seeing here, like we were saying, we bumped into a lot of soldiers through the valley, and we called these mystery meats because we weren't quite sure what was in the tins. But every time we met new people, we'd end up sharing food, and they'd give us these tins of mystery meat, and we'd give them fruit pastels or energy bars or something. So it was always quite a funny exchange. And then the other thing you can see is I actually have a few allergies, and we weren't quite sure how that was going to go down. So we just downloaded this little Google Translate thing that I had on my phone, and I could just show people. And mostly they just laughed, I think, because it wasn't really a thing that they'd come across. And I think most of their meals are pretty heavily milk-based. But that was just something to add, that we worked around it really well, and it wasn't an issue at all. So that's kind of food. And then just quickly on sort of transport and insurance. We've sort of mentioned before about the logistics company we used in country. So that was really helpful. They sort of helped liaise with drivers so that we could get from the airport to our valley. I've written here to remember to note where you're going, because we started driving and we were like, pretty sure the valley we need to go down is there and not there. So just keeping an eye on where your driver's going, because they might not have been to where you're going before. Thinking about the type of transport you're going to need. Is a normal car going to be okay? Are you going to need a 4x4? Are you going to need something a bit more robust? Are you going to have to go over sort of big rivers? So just sort of knowing or having in your mind about that kind of thing can be quite important. And knowing how far you're going to go. Are you going to need fuel? All of those sort of things. And if there's a logistics company, they'll probably have all that information, but it's just worth having a little think about that as well. And then obviously insurance is super important. Being able to be looked after if something does go wrong. You have to hope it doesn't. But proper sort of alpine, remote cover, depending on where you're going, is really important. BMC, British Mountaineering Council, is really good for this. They obviously, it's something that they've dealt with for a really long time. For more remote trips, they might want you to give quite a lot of information about your experience and what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be, how long you're going to be there for, what kind of expertise you have within the team. And quite often they'll have wanted you to be a member for a few years, because obviously they're putting you're sort of like a high risk person in terms of insurance in that sense. And then if there's any in-country mountain rescue, so for us, there was a Kyrgyzstan mountain rescue, and we were able to register with them, so they knew that we were going to be in a certain location for X amount of days, and then we had contact for them if we needed it. And we actually made documents with everybody's information on, so all our insurance documents, our next of kin, we had things like blood type on there, just so that if something did happen, we just had this really nice laminated document that just told a story of who we are, what we are, and how to look after us, basically. And we just carried that everywhere we went. So we carried our passport, we carried our border documents, we carried our insurance documents everywhere we went. And yeah, it's kind of really important, because if something does happen, you've got to know who to call. And I think Julie said about having quite a sort of regimented process and knowing what that process is if anything does go wrong, and you've got it written down, so that when your mind has sort of disappeared in that moment, you've got a little laminate saying, do this, do this, do this, do this. So yeah, anything to add to that, anyone?
That's grand, I think. Thank you, Fran.
No worries.
Hurrah. The final section, folks, is about telling the world what you're doing. I know we've touched on that already a little bit. It will probably be part of your funding obligations, that they'll want to see that you're kind of promoting whatever brand it is. So for us, we were, we had Sidetracked, but also like the Austrian Alpine Club, British Mountaineering Council, Scottish Mountaineering Trust. So to help them kind of promote themselves and what they're doing, we're kind of like promoting them on our social media. So we had an Instagram and a Facebook account for us. You might want to create your own website. It depends how, like, what your team is made up of, and who, if anyone is particularly tech savvy and they want to do that. Social media presence was pretty good, as Julie mentioned. We had our UK liaison, Helen, who we could send messages to off our InReachers, and she could update people as to what was going on back home. And then obviously Mountain Equipment had asked us for videos, so we're having to think about what we're going to be doing with that when we get back, and the writing as well. With all of that kind of like tech stuff, get on that fairly early, but it's not like super important. That can be one of those things that it's there and you can just update it when you have time, because you're going to be so busy doing all these other things that we've been chatting about tonight that it's kind of, you can just pop something every now and again on social media about what stage you're at in your planning, or what funding you've managed to achieve, or are you doing a training trip with your team, and you can put some photos up about that. Just anything that can generate a little bit of interest in what you're doing, a little bit of a following, so that the people that are giving you money and kit and stuff, they feel like they're also getting promoted through whatever it is you're doing. So yeah, it's not like, a huge kind of like thing that you need to focus on, but it's definitely good to have it on the back burner in the background. Just a very, very quick mention there. So that's me and Fran at Kendal Mountain Festival on the Buff Bothy stage, talking about our expedition to Kyrgyzstan. And we had to show them how big our packs were, didn't we, Fran? And these massive 30-kilo packs that we ended up carrying in the valley. So yeah, just like I said earlier, be prepared to do some interesting stuff. You never know where these expeditions will take you, basically. You end up doing things that you never thought you would have to. So that was quite nerve-wracking for Fran and I, but yeah, it was a new experience, wasn't it, Fran?
It was brilliant. Yeah, I
So
never thought
random.
I'd be
So
on a
very.
stage speaking in front of people because I am, well, I didn't think I was that kind of person. I get very nervous. I'm very nervous now, but we had such a good time. It was great.
It was a good fun evening, wasn't it? Or a weekend, sorry. And believe it or not, folks, that is pretty much everything that we thought you might want to know on a whistle-stop tour of kind of planning an adventure. So I guess it's worth asking if anybody has any questions. I'm going to stop sharing at this point so we can all see each other and have a chat. There we go.
Thanks so much, Jen. That's great. Well, yeah, let's get back to we can kind of see everyone. That would be fab. Yeah, I learned so much. I've never done any like big expedition like this at all before, so that was super interesting for me, and I think it just showed that how well you worked as a team, you know, because that is a lot to do, and I imagine your teamwork was flawless in the kind of build up to that, and then making sure that everyone had done their bit. So yeah, thank you so much, and that was a fantastic presentation. Thanks for all the work that's gone into that. We really appreciate it. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, Sarah's going, that's all right. No worries, Sarah. Thanks for coming along. If you did want to write in some questions, Sarah, like email them to me or write them in the Facebook group, and I'm sure I could send them along to these ladies, and they could always answer any specific ones. But thanks for joining. Yes, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I can read them out. Or if you want to kind of unmute yourself and dive in to ask a question, that would be great. I think to kick us off, I've got a question. In that, what would be the one thing that you'd change, kind of, if you went back and do it again? I expect there might be a few things, but what like there always is, not because you did it badly, but just because we know that benefit of hindsight is great, isn't it? But yeah, is there like one thing that you'd be like, oh, I'd do that differently?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Go on, Fran. No, go.
No, it's a bit of a strange one, which I guess I'd never thought about, and maybe you wouldn't have thought about, but because we were remote, we didn't have any signal, but we had these inReaches. It was really amazing because we could just get so much information, and we could message out and we could receive messages. You could use your mobile phone. There was an app that connected to the device. So you could basically use it like WhatsApp Messenger, which was phenomenal because getting weather forecasts and then giving information back about what we've been doing was great. But I think for me, it took away from the remoteness of the expedition a little bit because we had such good contact with the outside world. It sort of didn't feel quite how I thought it would feel. I think I thought it would just feel like super remote and like nobody's going to be, around. And actually, we could just message our friends and our family and quite readily. So it sort of was a bonus, but it was also like felt like it just took away from it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I think that's a brilliant one.
Yeah, and
mine's actually mine's a really boring kind of more like planning one, in that I wish we'd taken a drone. not for any like spectacular footage of us like, slogging sweatily up scree slopes, which is what we ended up doing a lot of the time. But the valley that we'd originally planned to go into, the Kaskasoo, we really struggled to get into it. It had been a very hot summer, and so the glacier melt was just insane. And the river that we had to cross, we waited a week for it to go down, basically. And, by the time it did, we tried going up the valley sides and they were just too loose. And I just wish we'd taken a drone so we could just see a little bit further up that valley and see what things were like. Because we just couldn't quite get to our initial first objectives. And I guess that's a good point of having some backup plans, actually, because we ended up in Minteke, which was a different valley, and we ended up exploring up there instead. But yeah, I always think back and just wonder, oh, what would have happened if we'd had a drone and been able to spot a route through and stuff. So yeah, mine's a little bit more of a kind of like research and practical kind of thing, I guess, but oh for drones.
I have a question.
Go for it, Anna.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting, and yeah, really cool to hear all the different perspectives on it as well. How long did it take you to plan this expedition? And like, what do you think is the good amount of like lead-in time, you know, in terms of like meeting people and getting a team and getting the funding and coming up with your objective and then actually going and doing the thing?
That's a really good question, actually, Anna. This project started way before COVID. So Julie and I, and Helen actually as well, who ended up being our UK liaison, we met in a pub somewhere. I think was it in Scotland or the Lake District, Julie? I can't even remember where we sat in that pub and had a chat. No, but it was like way pre-COVID, like 5 years before we'd ever actually got to Kyrgyzstan. And the team actually went through various kind of different iterations as people kind of came in, and then life got in the way, and then they dropped out and other people came. So it just kept kind of changing for quite a while. I guess the answer to that would be it depends greatly on the team that you have, because it depends on your skills and whether or not you're going to have to spend a lot of time together and kind of get the skills that you need to go and do the objective that you choose. But yeah, for us, I think was it 5 years in the end, Julie, that it took?
Yeah, I think it was. But I think when we got to the point when we're like, we are doing this, it was maybe 18 months when we actually properly started knuckling down and actually setting dates and things like that. So I think we sort of started maybe at the end of winter, sort of springtime, and then we went the following was it July, August, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But obviously, yeah, there was a lot that went on, and yeah, and COVID got in the way, and lots of other things got in the way.
So yeah, to be honest, Anna, it really does kind of depend on what you're going to do and who you're going to do it with. But I'd definitely say don't rush it. Like, make sure that you're happy with the team that you're going with, that everyone's skills, and that you've got everything in place. So yeah, as long as a piece of string, I guess. We've got also, just on a side note, if you are planning on going on an exped, we've got a little spreadsheet of all the funding and grants and stuff as well. So if anybody wants that, I'm happy to send that through to them, so they're not having to troll the internet quite as much. They're welcome to use what we've pre-done. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
I'll go on then. I've got a question. You might have answered part of it already, actually, but also just thank you for doing this, because it's so nice to hear women talking about things that people assume women can't do, and all the nitty-gritty, like, detail stuff that everyone wants to know. And I know it's not easy. Some of the stuff's quite nerve-wracking, so I really appreciate you guys putting the time in. Girls, sorry, putting the time in. Yeah, my question is really around I've been on quite a few expeditions, but I've never done anything unknown. Like, I've always been to places that I've been to before, or other people have been to before, so never done anything in a kind of new routing area. And the bit that really I'd like to understand is how you deal with the uncertainty of not knowing what's around the corner. Obviously, a drone is on my list now. But how do you scope out, how do you work out what's even a reasonable objective, or do you just go with loads of options? And what are the tactics for kind of working out which valley it's worth trying up, or which, you know, pointy bit looks like death on a stick, all that kind of stuff? Like, how do you manage all of those kind of decisions about route choice without committing to a week-long trek up a valley with a dead end?
Well, it is difficult, and I think when you are trying to go to new places or climb new things, that ultimately is might be what happens, and then. So you've got to be a little bit like, well, we're going to have a nice time anyway. This isn't the be all and end all. And it's sort of similar to what happened to us. So we, like Jen said before, we spent a lot of time looking at previous reports. So people who've been into our valley. So a lot of it is access. And if there's roads nearby that you can access the valley. So we sort of went from that point of view. People have been there, but not not been where we wanted to go. We wanted to walk a bit further in and do some mountains that were a bit more remote. And I spent a lot of time looking at Google Earth actually. But I'd not really done a lot of that before. So I spent a lot of time looking at it, and it was kind of useful. And then so from that we sort of planned to go down this valley, and then we looked at sort of a plan B and our plan B was hopefully going to be a lot easier and more accessible, like almost like a cert, if that makes sense. And then we tried to get up this valley, and we just couldn't really do it. So, and then we sort of sat around for a few days and sort of thought, well, what are we going to do now? And then we sort of, well, we need to try and do something. So then we went up this other valley, which was actually really good, and we did do some really cool stuff. But it is really difficult, and I guess just gathering as much information as you can, but also being aware that it can just not work out how you want it to. Like, I think, Fran, you were saying that you know a couple of people that they basically went on an expedition and they spent 2 weeks in a tent because it snowed and they couldn't actually access anything. So
yeah,
it is difficult because you spend a lot of money, and a lot of people kind of put money into it, but ultimately it might not go right, but hopefully your backup plans will be enough to make something work, if that makes sense. Does that kind of help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's that thing about kind of enjoying the process and not just being too outcome orientated.
Yeah, we walked up and down that valley so many times over so many days. It was like we knew every pebble and grass like tuft by the end of the first week, I think.
So you guys are the experts on that valley now.
And then we couldn't go any further anyway, so we had to rearrange what we did. But I think that was the thing for me, was like when I look back at it, although we did actually get up summits, that's not the thing that I immediately think is like the best part of it, which I thought was quite interesting, because I thought, like, you know, getting to the summit would be kind of the peak, but actually it wasn't at all. Like for me, it was, we were in the middle of this valley. There were like cattle wandering up and down. When we went into the next valley, we had like yaks and horses, and we sat talking, like singing songs with soldiers that had no English other than Manchester United and I don't know,
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I think it's that, like, realistic expectations as well, I think is quite important. And walking up and down a valley can actually be quite nice, but you might not get to where you want to go in the end.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, Ronnie, that's a really good question. And then maybe Anna, your question earlier, kind of for me, they link together. So my kind of takeaway was I felt like I was prepared and I felt resilient in myself, you know, that maybe we might not tick off that goal, but there was this goal. And we had 5 objectives in this valley, which immediately kind of made me feel like, oh, well, that's plenty. Like I've never had to go to a plan E, you know, like normally you're there by C or by D. But I hadn't really considered that actually none of those could be not possible. Like I didn't come away thinking 0 out of 5 would be achieved. Like Julie's just said, we went into the middle. Sorry, Jen said we went into the Min Tech Valley and we did 2 unclimbed peaks there. But I hadn't for a minute thought, oh, this valley we've scoped out for years isn't going to be possible. So having that realistic expectation, you know, that might look like death on a stick. So you're not going to do that. Okay, you can get things wrong and you can make mistakes, and don't feel like pressure to achieve this thing that isn't what you thought it was.
Really well put. I like it. Thank you.
I guess there's a thing with that where, like, because I guess for you guys, it was very much on the exploration side of things, wasn't it? And I suppose but when I've thought about these things before, it's like that information gathering. So maybe if you were more like climbing focused, maybe if that was your bigger goal, then maybe you'd go to a valley where someone had sussed out the rock type before, or, you know, something like that, I suppose. So yeah, it goes back to that thing of what's your objective, and having many objectives is great, but like what's the thing that is like the be all and end all, I suppose, I guess. for me, I think if I was worried about quality climbing, I'd probably forget so much of the exploration, completely no one's ever been there before thing, because like who knows what the rock's like, it might be like Weetabix, but then yeah. And I think whereas maybe if I was being more exploration and thinking, oh well, if it's Weetabix, never mind, I guess I would think about adjusting. It's that expectation management almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which I guess is so hard, because you're like, all the things, I want to do all the things, but yeah, kind of really dialing it down so you're not going to come away disappointed from all that time and that effort and that finance that you've put on it. But yeah,
we had a secondary objective as well. So as well as the first ascents, we were kind of like thinking about kind of education in terms of like taking people that hadn't been on an exped before, so Fran and Rach, and kind of like, you know, showing them the process with the idea that eventually they can plan their own expedition now they've seen one happens. I can't wait to be on it, by the way, ladies. And you know, and then it's kind of like it cascades, and they go on an exped and bring some people on who haven't done it before, and it kind of, you know. And one of my favorite things when we were going up our first kind of like mountain in the Minteke is just Rach, when she kept going, this is the highest I've ever been before. And we'd go a bit further up and you were like, what is this, Rach? And she's like, it's the highest I've ever been before. And, you know, in those little cool moments, and you're like, yeah, this is awesome that, you know, we've come to this random place and we haven't, you know, gone to those 5 peaks that we wanted to over there and done anything that's going to get us any kind of like amazing Instagram credits. But this is really cool. This is, you know, people going to places that they wouldn't have maybe thought about before. So having alternative objectives can make you feel pretty cool still. It's yeah, rather than just that main one objective of like first ascents and stuff.
How high did you get?
It's a good question. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Does anyone actually remember?
Or something. I think it was
4,900 was the second one, and 4,800
straight in there, Rach.
There we go.
Yeah. Every 100 meters until I couldn't talk. Yeah, they're not joking.
Love it.
Oh, brilliant. So I thank you so much. Like that was great and really valuable. And I have recorded it so people that weren't able to make it this evening have been able to watch. So I guess, are there any more expeditions planned? Are you going off anywhere else?
I would love to do another one, but probably not for 5 years. There's a lot more going on at the moment, but I'd love to go and do another one. My first one was back in 2017, and I went to Greenland with some folks. And this is just for those people that are watching this and thinking, oh my God, maybe I could never do that. Like my first expedition, I went onto Greenland with some friends of friends, and it was a ski touring expedition. And I didn't even own skis. I hadn't skied before. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And they went, do you want to come? And I was like, yeah, go on then. And that's very much how I just do everything. I'm like, yeah, you know, do you want to come climb in this thing? Yeah. Do you want to come and travel here? Yeah. And eventually you build up all this experience, and suddenly you're in the middle of nowhere in Greenland. And yeah, it's just, it's cool. I forget where I was going with that point, but just, yeah, go and have amazing adventures, folks. And like, if anyone does have any questions after the session, or anyone watches this and has any questions, just send them through to us and we will do our very best to answer them. And hopefully someone can go on a cool trip somewhere in the future. Another Monstrous Regiment trip, maybe somewhere cool.
Thanks, Ronnie. I'll read your comment in a minute. That would be really great to kind of get this information out here, because I think it is a common thing. Like lots of the women that come on our meets and our skill trips and stuff, you know, how do you do that? And a lot of it is like, well, just do it. Like it's really hard, isn't it? But then there's so many little things. So I think hearing directly from women who've kind of done that together with, you know, some of you more experienced than others, but that knowledge sharing is really great, and sometimes it's just the first thing you need, isn't it? So yeah, what's the best way people get hold of you, you all? kind of
they can send anything through to my email address if they want, and then I can share it with the group and we can collectively answer back. That's no worries at all, Jenny.
Okay, cool. I might stick that on the post then, if that's all right, when I share stuff.
Of course.
That's great. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for sticking around. A bit longer than advertised, but hopefully very valuable. And thank you so much to you for doing this. It's something that we've kind of been messaging about for ages, and then I'm quite proud of us for making it happen. So that's great, and hopefully, you know, with the recording as well, this will get out to some more people. So I think we'll draw it to a close there, if that's all right. And yeah, I will kind of have Jen's email address for everyone to contact, and I'll stick that in the Facebook group on the post, and then people can kind of contact you through there. And I will work out how to sort this recording. I'm going to stop it now.